I'm Psychologist Dr. Bryan Violet, and in today's snapshot, we'll be looking at highlights from my conversation with Mike Ciaccio. He's my former roommate, Catholic therapist, and director and founder for the Center for Healing. We'll be discussing anger and assertiveness and how that shows up differently in different regions of the United States, specifically the Midwest versus the Northeast, and perhaps even in the life of Jordan Peterson and Jesus Christ. This is the Catholic Center Show.
Right. Do you remember when we went to Target and you made me buy a vacuum?
I made you buy.
You did. You did.
I
didn't want to buy this $300 vacuum, but you're like, we have to have nice things in our apartment. I've never had nice things before. So use your student loan money and you're going to buy this vacuum. Now that is not a faulty memory or a lie.
No. Is that real? That's how you remember it?
No, seriously. Yeah.
I thought you were big into vacuums. You're a big vacuum guy.
A big vacuum. I am. I like to mow the lines straight in my living room.
You really suck. You teed that one up for me. So I'm going to butter you up. Start with some low-hanging fruit.
Wait, I'm leading this right now. So let's start with the music. No.
I will edit that out. I edit these shows to make myself look incredible and my guests terrible.
That's great. That's exactly what I wanted. That's what I wasn't worried about when we were, going back and forth about my anxiety.
Listen, that's another topic I want to talk about. I want to get there.
I know you do.
Your resistance to being on my show.
I know.
But I want to butter you up first. I want to warm you up. And then with each question I have, it'll get progressively more difficult until you end up crying at the end of the show. Why didn't you want to come on my show?
Oh, why didn't I?
You asked me for
That's
editing control over the show. Now, listen, this may just be about me. But I can understand wanting to have editing control. I mean, you're acknowledging that you're a sinner coming on this show. That can't be easy for you.
Yeah. Oh no, it's easy. It's easy. Yeah, I'm in a space where that's easy.
Good. Do you feel pressure to manicure your image as a business owner, as a therapist, as a Catholic?
Yeah. You know what it boiled down to there? When we talked on the phone, we were talking about some hot button topics, and you were getting a rise out of me. And I was like, I don't think I want to talk about these things on the air because you have a gift, Brian. You have a gift.
Gift.
You can pull out honesty out of anybody. And it just...
I think you phrased it. Hold on. I think you phrased it as you bring out the worst in me, which was an insult. And now you're saying that I help you to become more honest.
You do.
Which is it?
There's a rawness that you can pull out that I was like, crap, if I get on this YouTube, if I connect with this guy, then I might be just, I wonder what people are going to think about the Center for Healing after I do this. Well, it's like a different side of me, like my blog posts and, hopefully I'm not two-faced. I'm not two-faced, but it's a different side where I can just be real. I'm drinking a Sprite and we're talking Cubs and
you shouldn't drink Sprite though. There's a lot of sugar.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. Just Gatorade Zero.
No, I mean, I was going to talk to you at some point, and we could just jump into it right now. I was going to talk to you about your approach to therapy. Yeah. And I mean, maybe we could hold off on that. Maybe we could try and frame this conversation in terms of regional differences.
Sure.
Because I learned when I became your roommate all those many years ago that there are many countries within one country. And there are cultural differences between us. There's a chasm between us culturally that cannot be crossed.
Right.
And I'm wondering if the directness of the Northeast is what you're allergic to.
Right. The directness of the Northeast. And where do you think the Midwest is? Like, do you think do you think we're in the Midwest, or where do you think like this Kansas, Missouri, Nebraska, Iowa thing is?
I think it's the Midwest. Am I wrong? Is it not the Midwest?
No, it's the Midwest. Yeah. I think some people even think like a little further east of here is even the Midwest.
Ohio, for example.
Sure. Yeah. I don't know if technically that's.
Well, there's some debate about Ohio. Some people think it's the South. Southern Ohio is the South.
Right. Sure.
No, I think that you're all very nice.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's pleasant for a while.
Yeah.
I think it's pleasant for a while. But I always wonder where I stand with people.
Mm-hmm.
Bless my heart. You know, I wonder, I mean, I don't think authenticity is the same. And there's something wrong with every culture. I mean, obviously, directness from the Northeast can be construed as rude and problematic.
Yeah, you come off as pretty rude. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And we're honest, you know where you stand with us. But I think in the Midwest, there's a lot of tact, a lot of politeness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's good in terms of getting along collectively. But I struggle to know where I stand with people, and I want to know where I stand. Maybe if I was raised there, I pick up on the subtleties, you think?
Yeah. No, you're definitely picking up on something. I think there's two things. That goes back to the business. I'm wondering if like I was afraid to come on because of your directness, and also like what would be the image of the Center for Healing or myself, and like just wanting to be polite and have a nice podcast like I've done in the past before. But I'm definitely one where the last 5-7 years, like a growth in being more direct and being very straightforward in therapy with my family. I think it's something that is very much there. I'll never forget a time I just keep bringing up stories when we were rooming together where we had gotten into a fight. I won't tell you about this fight. You won't like it because I actually ended up winning the fight. But you had made a comment though, like if I could tell you what I really felt, I would crush you, or you said something like that, because it had to do with like this directness.
You would crush me?
No, you said that to me, that you would crush me.
Oh my gosh.
With your assertiveness and directness.
So I had to hold back?
So you were holding back from me with certain things that you wanted to tell me because you felt like I was too fragile. And so, so pointing back to you a little bit with the directness, it can come off as harsh.
But I didn't actually say it. I said if I did say it.
Right. So I appreciate you not doing that.
Listen, I was a younger man, and I apologize. I don't think that's very nice or charitable.
It wasn't. That's what I was looking for, was an apology.
It's a veiled threat, isn't it?
Yeah, it was. There was a veiled threat behind it.
What was the fight I lost? I want to know.
It might have had to do with the vacuum.
The vacuum that supposedly I made you purchase?
Yeah.
But you weren't vacuuming, or I wasn't vacuuming? Do you recall the actual fight, or do you not really remember?
No, I really don't remember the fight. But I remember the scene, you walking away in the hallway and whatnot. And actually, a part of me was like, I want to be more like this guy. And that's also partly why I married Carla, is because she's very direct and straightforward. Has a people pleaser side, and she would agree with that. But that directness, I was really drawn after that. And so there is a cultural difference, and I see it. And being over there, it was being over when I was on the East Coast in DC with you.
Yeah.
I could definitely feel the difference there. And yeah, quite frankly, I thought most people were rude.
But
then I learned that right.
DC's it gets worse than that. Trust me. Well, it's funny because I've been trying to inhibit ever since.
Oh, really?
and be less direct.
These polarized parts we've had to bring to the middle ground, huh?
Yeah, virtue is in the mean, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Right.
Isn't that something we learned in graduate school?
Right.
So, do you have any hypotheses regarding why there are cultural differences between different regions of the country? I mean, is it corn related? I mean, like why are Midwesterners more
Say it.
I had a lot of words that just ran through my head.
Okay.
I was going to say polite.
Censoring.
Let's go with polite. They are polite. There's no doubt about it. It's more pleasant to be around someone. They're more affable. They're more easygoing, right. At least nicer. Outwardly.
Yeah.
Nicer. Yes, definitely.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, I can point out anybody who's from Omaha. If I'm around Kansas City and like I pick out, like I am talking to somebody, I can pretty much pick out if they're a Nebraskan or an Omahayan. Like it is very clear. And so.
What's different?
The way they talk and then how they look you in the eyes and then their kindness. Like you could tell, and if you can tell they have like, they're slower as in not IQ wise at all, but they're just slower in their delivery and more chilled and laid back. Not fast paced.
Maybe that accounts for the difference. The amount of people, the amount of people in the Northeast, the population, the pace of life associated with that population, the need to get things done.
Sure.
Doesn't leave as much space to slow play relationship dynamics. So you get right to the heart of it.
Right. Well, I guess maybe to flip it back to you a little bit, I've heard this is more of like a politically correct, nice cultural thing going on in our nation. I mean, Jordan Peterson would say that, if I could bring up that name, because I love him and I think he's awesome. But I've been told...
Would say what?
Would say that this is sort of an epidemic in the United States in general, is being politically correct, being nice, too nice, and not knowing really where you stand with people because there's a front.
Well, I don't know that. I think political correctness is definitely a problem. I mean, I think people aren't sure where the boundary line is in terms of what can be said and not said. And I think a lot of people inhibit for fear of being canceled. I mean, but we're never gonna resolve any of this anger, this tension, this division, unless we at least start walking in the same direction together. That's another reason why my big pitch for this show is let's talk about something that's not necessarily political or religious. Let's talk about art. Let's talk about a film.
Yeah.
Right.
Or the Cubs. At least
meet or the Cubs, right? Or the Cubs, or video games, or sports, or any kind of sport, or anything. You know, I want to connect on a human level, and then once that connection is grounded and solid, then hopefully that can insulate any difference of opinion. I haven't heard Peterson talk about people being too polite. I know he's not polite,
right,
at all. I think I like the guy. I think he's angry. I could like my clinical hat on. I can feel an anger like that he exudes. And that may be because he's on defense because he gets attacked so frequently. So I don't want to criticize the guy about it, but I can feel something of that. I like that he stands up for what he believes.
Yeah.
I like that he has given voice to a very large section of the population that has felt voiceless.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that's good. What do you like about him?
Yeah. Yeah. You know, the 12 rules are awesome. And how he walks through this really unique way of like living, you know? And to me, like when you hear him speak and his directness, it's not that far from how Jesus speaks in the Bible. Is that like going too far? Maybe. Like his directness and the way that he calls a spade, and also how, at times he can be mean. Like, didn't Jesus like name things and get angry and flip tables at times? And, you know, did he always like, it was all out of love, but did he always have like that loving eye? Like loving eyes? I don't know.
I think it's tough to psychoanalyze Jesus. I think Christ. I think it was very case specific with Christ. I mean, certainly, if you believe he's God, he had the insight to be able to tell what people needed to hear, and sometimes that is directness, and calling someone out for the sake of hitting them square in the eyes with the truth,
or calling them names. He called people names at times.
He did.
right?
He did.
But then you do see in Jordan Peterson's podcast, like another side to him. He's an excellent listener. His empathy is off the charts. And then the way he talks with a calmness to people who he's like connecting with is incredible. But then the way he fights the culture is a fight. And he's very assertive and gets into the fight.
Yeah, and I think if you a close examine the dangerous thing about analyzing Christ or people that write about Christ is you read their texts and they're pretty much writing about themselves. It's basically a projected profile, and so you can read a lot into Christ, and I wouldn't want to limit him to just challenging people. There's times when he's very compassionate and gentle, and accepting and tolerant, very tolerant, depending on which population we're talking about. Pharisees, no, he gets pretty ticked off, but tax collectors, let's drink, let's have dinner together.
Right. So I think that's the side, though, like in this Catholic Center podcast, what we're doing here, like that's the side that's not talked about enough and that's not mentioned and that's not preached from the pulpit. Like, I don't know, like I get the gentle, kind, like Jesus who's so merciful, and I have met him, and amen. Thank God for Jesus' mercy and what he's done in my life, and also thank God for he knows how, like Jesus is very clear with be shrewd as serpents and simple as doves, right? He's very clear, like, do not give your pearls to swine, right? He's very clear, like, there are abusers out there, and you have to be careful with the dominance hierarchy with what Jordan Peterson talks about, And so that's the side that I'm getting into here.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm thinking about what you said earlier with that fight that we had long ago. And a part of you saw how direct I was, and you were attracted to that. And so it sounds like for you, you've personally been on a trajectory of becoming more direct, more assertive, and saying what you feel, even if it might hurt someone's feelings. Whereas perhaps in your younger years, there was much more consideration of the emotional impact on what you would say on people, and at the expense of telling the truth or being direct, or maybe even sharing your authentic self. Right. And so for you, that dimension of Christ is calling you forward. Is that fair?
Yeah, no, that's definitely fair. It's the balance between honor and honesty and finding that middle ground, right? It used to all be like honor, honor, honor. Honesty's down here. You have to honor the person, forgive them, like no anger, and just move forward, take the higher ground. I learned that within my family system and nice Catholic schools and things like that. And now, thanks to some of my Protestant friends and Protestant materials that I've been reading, like actually honor and honesty go together. And guess what? That's pissed off a lot of people in my family.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think we know when you're working with someone, there's oftentimes a resistance to accessing anger because of Christian narratives around forgiveness, or, I mean, really, those narratives are spiritualizing family dynamics and family narratives, right? It's anger is dangerous. Yeah. I'm not allowed to express it. It's going to hurt others. And people, as they get older, jump right to forgiveness and they skip anger. But what are you forgiving if you're not angry? Like, the anger recognizes the transgression. So basically all you're doing is just repressing your anger.
Right.
You're not allowing yourself access to it. And back to the earlier point, if you're close, and like any sound relationship, you should be close enough that the dynamic insulates any tension or anger that's exchanged between the two of you. Like, that's the healthiest, right? So Italians yell at each other all the time. My wife is from Arizona. She's from the Southwest. And her first exposure to, well, me, but eventually my family system was surprised at how direct and how comfortable we are with anger. Yeah. And we let it out and then it's over. Right. We don't harbor anger.
Right.
We have other problems, but
how did you start to swing that pendulum from being like more direct or on the angry side to more of a middle ground of, what would you call that? Well, I'd call directness in the middle and like aggressiveness over here and passivity on the other side.
Assertiveness, perhaps?
Yeah.
you want to get to the mean, the virtue of assertiveness. I think for me, it was, honestly, it began with getting out of Connecticut. That's where it began. And encountering people like yourself, encountering people in DC from different parts of our country, because it's a strange soup in DC. It's not quite the Northeast. It's not quite the South. It's not quite the Midwest. You have international presence there. But encountering people, I suddenly experienced people perceiving me as rude. Whereas before that, when I was in Connecticut, I was just part of the cultural milieu and generally considered to be a nice guy. But I always had good intentions. So when I encountered people in DC and people perceived me as rude, I really took offense to it and wanted to change. I think as I grew, I think in my clinical work too, if you think of like the two main dimensions of providing care for someone, it's rapport building and challenging, right? Broad strokes, but generally speaking, you can't challenge someone unless you have rapport. I never had a problem challenging anybody. And for those who could take that, it was great. And we had a great therapeutic relationship. But I need to expand my personality, not be so rigid, and develop my own sense of tenderness for people that needed intense rapport building to know that I love them and care about them. Because if they don't know that, then what I say can be perceived as critical, as judgmental, any number of things. So I think my clinical work was a big part of it, and getting married, another thing. I mean, being a man and learning to cultivate that tenderness to deal with my wife. I don't think it's any one source, but it's been a long project for me.
A journey. Yeah. Having children.
Yes.
I like what you said about the anger piece though, because that's a tension within our family is like this, a lot of this hugs, but then also a lot of this, right? And so there's the discipline of teaching that goes on. And also like my kids will just get angry, and like anger is something that's like out in our house. And sometimes I wonder, well, it gives me a lot of anxiety. I grew up with a quiet house. My brother and I called it the museum. Now we think it actually was a little more like a IKEA store, but museum fits as well.